What actually happened? Why was there such a dispute between Ireland and Britain?
We're just gonna jump straight into it, innit?
We'll move on to the happy stories.
Not onto my nice little stories about Halloween and things like that. Straight into
you know, at the bottom of your page of research, you put Britain. That's where I've gone.
It's not like as simple as this one thing happened and that was the end of it, because like it's just a thing that's been ongoing for like a very long time, and there's lots of different parts of history where it like starts up again, or there's different reasons. So one of the first ones was in the 1100s, is when the Normans, who had previously just conquered England, then decided to expand to Ireland, and they tried to conquer Ireland, but like didn't do the best job. They had a bit. They set up the Lordship of Ireland, but there was still lots of native Irish people like outside of the Lordship of Ireland, if you know what I mean. Like it only took over like some major shipping ports really and the outside areas, but lots of the rest of especially Royal Ireland was sort of not within it.
Is that where the Northern Ireland Republic of Ireland split came from?
No, Scott. No. We got a while before we get to there, mate.
All right, I thought because you said like they took over like some of it, but not all of it.
Yeah.
There was just sort of like, it was sort of like a occupation more than anything, where they were in the land and they had control of the land, but didn't actually have. Yeah. There was lots of like outlaws to them.
Yeah, so then that was in the 1100s. Then if we skip forward to the 1500s, we have King Henry VIII.
Okay.
You ever heard of him, Scott?
Let's see if I can remember the thing. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived.
Yes, you got it right. Well done. But King Henry VIII and his decision to conquer Ireland in the 1500s, which was for no other reason really than he just wanted to. Just
felt like it.
Yeah. And then during the 1600s, the crowns of Scotland, England, and Ireland were unified under, I think it was James II.
Yeah.
In that time, even though the crowns were unified, Ireland was treated as like a subservient colony. It wasn't treated as like its own part like the rest of the kingdom.
Right. That never ends.
And then by the 1700s is when the British had really taken up most of the wealth and the power within the country and left the Irish natives to basically be peasant class.
Right.
And obviously this is where you're getting a lot of that like tension from like hundreds of years of English subjugating the Irish.
Yeah, they're just they're essentially an oppressed group at this point.
Yeah, but in their homeland, so
yeah, that's the weird part. Is it's like we've taken over, and now they're being oppressed. It's sort of like almost like the Native Americans in a way, or Indians, as CGP Grey would have us call them, where people just came over and now they're oppressed, even though they're in their homeland. It's rightfully theirs.
Yes. Which again, as we said, is kind of a theme of this podcast with England.
Yeah.
But yes. And as we had the predominantly Catholic Irish, and then we have with Henry VIII, the Protestant English coming over to rule them, is where we had start seeing big divides within Ireland itself due to Catholics versus Protestants.
Right, this is ringing a bell because most of the conflict in Ireland is Catholic versus Protestant, isn't it?
Well, kinda. So we have, as you were saying, you wanted to know about how Northern Ireland became a thing. It's when Ireland did eventually get their independence. We had the pro-unionists to the north of the country, which were also predominantly Protestant, which is where you have that big divide in how Northern Ireland did end up remaining part of the UK. And then we have the Republic of Ireland forming its own country.
So Ed Sheeran's talked about this and the sort of the religious divide, because that's the how his grandparents met. One of them was Protestant and one of them was Catholic, so it was like a completely forbidden relationship at the time because they were from completely different cultures. And he wrote a whole love song about it. It's a big part of the Divide album. That's where I know that the religious divide has come from. It's because of Ed Sheeran.
Well, you know. I didn't know that, so that was interesting to know. What's on Divide then? Because I can't think of just the album. So
the Divide is Eraser. It's his best album, easily. Let's put up the track list, right? Galway Girl. It's got Castle on the Hill. You must know that.
Yeah.
Shape of You.
Yeah.
Perfect. Happier. Supermarket Flowers is one about grief.
I was going to say one about Greece, mate.
No, it was Nancy Mulligan. I'm pretty sure is the one, because Mulligan, I believe, is an Irish name, isn't it? Like O'Neill.
Well, O'Neill definitely is. The O means descendant of.
I'm just going to read the... Nancy Mulligan is one of the most personal songs on the album, telling the story of how his grandparents, William Sheeran, and a Protestant from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and Nancy Mulligan, real name Anne Mulligan, a Catholic from the Republic of Ireland, met and fell in love during the Second World War and got married at the Wexford border.
Okay.
They got engaged and no one turned up at their wedding because it was such a divisive thing. That's just, it's one of those things that speaks to how deep set the divide was. It was almost like it was a civil war, wasn't it? Essentially, between the North and the South.
I guess in some ways, yeah. I mean, for most of it was the Irish fighting for their independence from the British, and then we had those internal conflicts within Ireland itself.
But Ireland was part of Britain, wasn't it? So it must have been a civil war at some point for Ireland to get... it's probably really contentious to call it a civil war, because that would call Ireland part of the UK. But surely before they got their independence, it was considered a civil war.
I mean, they had their independence prior to the Troubles.
Did they?
Yeah.
So how did they get their independence?
Well, a lot of it all started during World War One. Is when the Irish really started to be like, we've had enough of this now. Ireland was then granted home rule under the British Crown as a free state in 1922, and then voted to become a republic in 1937. However, we had the northern parts, in mainly the Ulster region, decided to remain as part of the UK, and then that's where it became.
Oh, so that's what. So they essentially did. They kind of did like Brexit, but a Rexit. And then half of the.
I mean, I wouldn't compare it to Brexit because it was like a bloody guerrilla warfare.
See, this is what I was saying, because the way you phrased it then, it sounded almost peaceful. But if I remember right, from what I know of it,
no, it was not very peaceful at all. No.
Yeah, it was viciously not peaceful.
Yes. There's an amazing film about it called The Wind That Shakes the Barley.
Yeah.
Starring Cillian Murphy. Phenomenal movie.
Rob, do we have our first homework?
We do. People go watch The Wind That Shakes the Barley, starring Cillian Murphy. It is absolutely amazing.
We'll do a bonus segment next time where we talk about it, because I'll watch it.
Yeah. I got it on DVD, mate. It's quality.
Fair play, fair play. But yeah, so it was a violent conflict between the two regions, and that's when it sort of... So did Britain give in to the violence in a way? Because they gave the option for like a referendum on the sovereignty of it, didn't they?
No.
I thought you said they voted.
No, this was after they became a free state under Home Rule. As a free state is when they became So in 1922, they get their free state status.
Yeah.
No longer part of the British Crown and all stuff.
Okay.
In 1937, they become an official republic, and that is when Northern Ireland...
And Southern Ireland...
Don't call it Southern Ireland.
The Republic of
The
Ireland.
Republic of Ireland.
Split.
Split.
But am I right in saying that now it's called Ireland?
I've always known it to be the Republic of Ireland.
The passport just says Ireland.
Oh. What does a UN membership say?
Ireland.
It was actually.
It's Ireland.
But you would differentiate it by the Republic, you would not say Southern.
Yeah. So it's it's the country of Ireland on the island of Ireland, with Northern Ireland being another thing.
Yeah, part of the UK.
I reckon what we should do is we should call the island... What was it they called the island? Oh, Jesus. Why do they have to call it such a similar name to Ireland? It's Ireland and Island. We should call the island...
Well, it's because it's named after Ere,
Yeah.
which was a Celtic god, and they named it after her, so it's called Eru, and then it became Ireland. See, the thing is with the religious history is quite interesting, because they had, like I say, they had that big Catholic-Protestant divide, but prior to becoming Catholic, because the original settlers were Celts,
Yeah.
who travelled across in about 500 BC, in like...
Celts.
Yeah.
Like Celtic people.
Celtic.
Celtic.
Yeah, it's pronounced Celtic.
Well, that's me done. Isn't that from Scotland?
No, Celtic people originate from Europe. Then there was a huge
Normans. Is it the Normans?
no, because the Normans originally were Vikings.
Okay. All right.
So, generalists believe that about 500 BC there was a huge Celtic migration where the Celtic people of Europe left mainland Europe and migrated to the British Isles and Ireland. And some of these Celtic people did go to Ireland, so they brought a lot of their own Celtic beliefs in that, and then their own language. Irish was a Gaelic language, which is related to the Scottish. So they had their own sort of mythology and gods, such as like Finn McCool or Cuchulainn. Have you ever heard? You look at me so like...
Finn Baloo and Cuchulainn.
Finn McCool and Cuchulainn.
Finn McCool and Cuchulainn.
You ever heard of any of these?
Not at all.
So you might know Finn McCool from the Giant's Causeway.
No.
You must know the Giant's Causeway.
No.
It's like a big like tourist attraction in Northern Ireland.
No.
It's like these giant pillars coming out of the ground all over the place in like hexagon shapes. The myth behind it is that Finn McCool went to fight a giant from Scotland, and as he was so mad trying to leave Ireland to get to Scotland, he then began to pick up parts of the coast and throw them as to make like a bridge for him to walk across. And he went to run across the bridge, saw how big the giant was, came back because he was like, I'm not fighting a giant. Got his wife to trick the giant into thinking Finn McCool was a baby, and then when the giant saw how big the baby was like, oh, his dad must be huge. So then he left and tore apart the causeway.
That's amazing. So in their own mythology, their god was too small to fight a giant, so had to trick the giant into thinking it was a baby.
Yeah, but there's hundreds of stories about Finn McCool. He's on so much stuff. He's like a warrior king and everything.
Oh, fair enough.
So that's just one of the more famous ones because of the landmark that is there today that you can actually go visit and see.
Fair play. I'll put a picture into the show notes.
And Cuchulainn is another famous one. He's a warrior king again, warrior god. But see, this is the interesting thing with the are they gods or are they kings? Is because when the Romans brought Catholicism to the island, it started to become more Catholic. Instead of actually like taking over the religion, a lot of the original like Irish Gaelic beliefs remained as part of the overarching history of the island, the mythology of the island, and became intertwined with Irish Catholicism even to this day. With like these figures being part of like either stories or like folklore or like gods changed to kings as part of the overarching history of Ireland. And you can still see it today with like the Celtic cross. You must have seen the Celtic cross.
Probably, but I don't recall it.
So if you think of like a normal cross with like a circle around it in like the...
I'll just check 100%. I'll just have a look. But I'm pretty sure I know what you're on about, yeah.
So you can see this all over Ireland even today as a very like prominent like feature of the way they practice Catholicism now. They almost merged the two together. So it's quite a unique blend of Christianity.
Yeah.
But again, like they didn't really write much down before the intervention of Christianity.
Oh,
so a lot of the stories we do have the Christian spin on it, as opposed to like what it perhaps originally was. But it's still like it's very interesting to fact.
So it's similar in Iceland in that way, where it's like the first people to write were Christian. So
yeah, like how
there's a
sagas.
skew in it. There's like a okay.
But it's one of the more well preserved original like mythologies. Ireland is also known as like the island of saints and scholars.
Okay.
Because it was a peaceful transition from to Christianity. So you must have heard of like Saint Patrick, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea is like he came to the island, removed all the snakes, and then sort of set up Christianity on there, which is like it's not entirely true because of like as far as we're aware, Ireland never had any snakes to begin with. So like the one thing he's super famous for.
God damn it.
I was
going to say, he removed all of the snakes.
That's what he's famous for, is getting rid of the snakes from Ireland.
From Ireland, for the entire country?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's actually kind of thought maybe that's just like a euphemism for the pagans.
The pagans?
Yeah, some people think it might be a euphemism for like the pagan people, like he converted them,
ousted them. Because we call like people snakes now if they're sort of like disagreeing with us.
Yeah, so people think it might be a euphemism for that.
That's amazing.
But it's also debated whether he was actually even a real dude or if he was two dudes. I don't know. It's actually an ongoing like historical debate. So
is it?
Yeah.
Well, we should jump right into it then. Do you think it's 2 people or 1 person?
I wouldn't know, but I don't believe he got rid of the snakes.
Well, fair enough.
That's just what I was.
No, he did get rid of all of the snakes. He brought a snake with him and then threw it into the ocean and got rid of all the snakes in Ireland.
But as I could say, it was mostly a peaceful transition. So there was tons of monasteries set up on that island. They would be taught like Greek and Latin, and that's how they would transcribe their original tales into Latin. So that's why we can read them and know what they are today. So that's where it gets the name the Isle of Saints and Scholars, because there was a lot of monks who were very well learned, and even like they were still one of the most like recent countries up until when like the sort of 17 to 1800s, when the British really came to enforce and subjugate the Irish people. They had one of the oldest, longest traditions of teaching in ancient Greek and Latin to transcribe the original like works of the more famous philosophers and things like that.
So essentially they were transcribing the languages that are basically almost lost now. There's not many ancient Greek speakers now, is there?
No. Well, apparently it's not like impossible.
So we kind of
But it's not
out.
like you can learn ancient Greek. Like
Yeah.
you can learn to read it.
We did a fairly good job of stamping out that sort of avenue of culture being remembered.
Well, ancient Greek, apparently some Greek speakers can kind of maybe figure out. We do definitely know how ancient Greek was and how it was used, because like loads of our words come from ancient Greek.
Example?
Things like psychology and stuff like that would
I
come
see.
from like more like they're usually used for more like the sciences, like the ancient Greek like roots of these words. But
So it was a hodgepodge language.
it wasn't like a hodgepodge language. They were all 3 separate: Irish,
Oh,
Latin,
right. So it was a
and Greek. The scholars would, the monks, the monasteries would know all 3 and be able to write in all 3. And it's one of the longest traditions of teaching all 3 until the
Right.
British came over and was like, no, you guys can't do any of that.
You have to speak
English
English.
or nothing.
Oh, no.
Even though we teach Latin here, but they were deemed not worthy to learn.
That's ridiculous. Oh, man. If I could see some of my ancestors, I'd slap them.
So would I, mate. So would I. But being that it was such a learned country with so many scholars and monasteries and monks everywhere, when it come time for the Vikings to turn up,
Oh, yeah?
and as we all know, one of Vikings' favourite pastimes was raiding, especially monasteries, because there's tons of religious artifacts, jewel-encrusted manuscripts, gold, money within monasteries. And they're generally not defended, they're just like peaceful monks. The Vikings had a field day pillaging the monasteries of Ireland. But they did do a couple things that was fairly important to the history, and even to Ireland today, is they set up a lot of the first cities. Because before it'd be more like tribes, called like ruled by like I think they're called Lutha, but they were like the kings, and there was like over 100 of them all over the country. But then living in like these certain tribal villages, and then the Vikings set up important cities like Dublin and Cork.
Really? So this is an interesting one where, like, Vikings were... I mean, I know Vikings as being sort of barbarians, being very violent, but actually they were very good at society because they built cities.
Well, you find that with any culture that conquers and expands. To have the means to usually conquer would make you a pretty like powerful and advanced society. The means to travel that many men to a different place, then conquer it and set up a civilization there, or set up like even settlements, usually makes them pretty like advanced in that sense. You find it like all over, as we're talking about how Britain always do it. You'll see like if you go to places, you conquer them, you kind of mess up the place for the people living there, but you do install these things you brought with them, like the Romans did, and how they installed like sewage systems, bathing systems, and gave us roads.
They're good at the game of civilization.
Well, if you're going to expand like that, then you would be.
You'd have to be, yeah.
And as we said, like in our last episode, the Vikings then did take a lot of women from Ireland to Iceland.
Yeah, so they basically destroyed, or not really destroyed, but took advantage to the full because they stole everything from the monasteries and took the women to be slaves and wives and things. Beautiful. So, we still don't have a sponsor. However, I've got 2 things to quickly mention. The first is that we've set up the Patreon so that you can either buy us a coffee or a beer, which, to be fair, coffee is vital for when I'm editing it and beer is vital for when we're recording it. So those are the 2 drinks which are fundamental to creating Rob's Map. If you do want to help fund those, then fantastic, thank you. There are links in the show notes. And the second thing is we've set up a sort of a Rob's Map clips version of the podcast. So essentially, you can go over there. There's 5 to 10 minute sections which have a specific topic. So I'm not sure if we've actually, I don't know where I'm putting this. We might have talked about Halloween, or we might be about to talk about Halloween, but that part will be in a separate clip that's on the Clips version. Link in the show notes to that as well, but essentially it just makes it easier to share. That's it from me. Thank you for listening. Yeah, bye. How do we start talking about the flag?
We ain't got the flag and Scott, because it's everyone's favourite part of the show, what everyone's been waiting for. It's the flag, Scott.
The flag of Ireland is... I think I know this. Because isn't
right.
the...
What does the flag look like then?
Well, it's gold, green and white, isn't it?
No.
No?
No.
I'm right that there's white, isn't there?
It is a vertical tricolour of green, white and orange.
That's what I said. What did I say?
Gold.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see it as being gold. But the white is the hope for peace, isn't it?
Yes. Between the green is representing the Irish nationalist, the Irish tradition and Irish nationalism and republicanism. The orange represents the Protestant minority that was supported by William II of the House of Orange, who defeated the last Catholic king of England, who was also the king of Scotland and Ireland at the time, James II. So the orange represents the Protestants, the green kind of represents the Catholics, and the white in the middle is the hope for peace between the two.
It's telling of how divisive the country is that they literally have the hope for peace as part of their flag.
Yeah.
Do you reckon they'll ever achieve true, proper peace between the entire geographical island?
Yeah. So, yeah, I do actually. I do think they will. I think it'll happen when the Union falls apart in the UK. When Scotland get their independence.
Interesting.
And then, because a lot of the whole thing was the whole trouble when we're leaving the EU is the fact that since the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, there is never supposed to be a hard border in between Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland. There should never be a hard border. But if we're going to leave the EU, we need a solid border to stop movement, because that's one of the big key things is freedom of movement. So right now, the agreement is that we're going to have a soft border there, so you can come and go as freely as you want in Ireland, but there will be more of a hard border between the actual island itself and the rest of...
See, this doesn't...
And then Great Britain. But as the rise for Scottish nationalism goes up, and more Scottish independent, and as they're going to be more... Northern Ireland will be more segregated from the rest of the UK, I think if the Union falls apart like that, then they will do. They also have the right, with the Good Friday Agreement, to at any point vote to secede and rejoin the rest of Ireland.
So that makes sense. I could see them seceding and joining with... But I can't see... I don't understand this whole hard border, soft border thing, because right now, the UK was in the EU,
yeah,
and we still had a hard border.
No, we didn't.
Well, we did. We checked passports when people came in. We checked everything.
Not in Ireland, though.
How is this different?
Because Ireland's part of the EU.
Then how is this different? So, because the UK was part of the EU, and we still did passport checks.
But you don't need a visa to come over. Stuff like that.
Right.
Because I don't know if you've been to the EU recently. You can just kind of just walk in and just scan your passport.
This is what I mean. But go back 5 years. I could go from France to the UK. I would still have to have my passport stamped and checked. So what's the problem with having Ireland do the stamp and check?
Because it's supposed to be as if it is one country. There's not supposed to be any real form of border. Because it's supposed to be representing like they are peaceful and there is no ongoing conflict anymore. So then
why can't Ireland have the stamp and check? So if you're going from France to Ireland, then do the stamp and check. Because we did it when we were a member state of the EU. We still have people signing their passports and everything.
Yeah, it's not just stamp and check. It's like visas, like how long you're allowed to stay, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing with like the border. Like there's never supposed to be one there, but obviously as Ireland's part of the EU and we're leaving the EU, that part of the whole thing, well, there has to be like, if we don't want freedom of movement at all, we have to put up a hard border now.
Yeah,
Because even before, like our border would.
They've compromised it where they've said like there'll be a hard border between the geographical island of Ireland.
I don't think that's set in stone, but that's the idea that they're going with.
They're doing the political thing of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, which is why I think if you put that border there and Scotland leaves, I think that is when they'll reunify.
But at that point,
because they have the right to do it at any moment they want to.
But what's happening with Wales then in your scenario? Are they just going to be
Wales is for another day. Wales is a bit more complicated than that. Well, maybe not, but
like, would they stay with England or would they also go for independence? Because I can't. Maybe I'm underestimating Wales, but I couldn't see them being their own country.
It's the way each of these countries was brought into the union. Whereas it was a union between the Scottish and the English, well, a union of kings. Because we needed a king, so we took their king.
Of course.
So they became king of both countries, and eventually our parliaments were unified.
That's the thing of the...
Wales was just subjugated. Ireland was just subjugated, but then when Ireland wanted their freedom, the North decided to remain. So there is difference on how they have rights and how it was supposed to, how the unions were formed, basically.
So, do you remember on the Hong Kong episode?
Yeah.
In about the last 5 minutes when we were deciding which country to do next, we decided on a theme for what we would do. Is to go through the alphabet.
Yeah.
Which lasted all of one time before we completely... But it's I again. So it accidentally falls into it. I still think we should keep consistent to the alphabet naming system of the countries.
Well, see, that's what I thought when I listened back to Hong Kong, and at the end you was like, yeah, we'll go through the things. That's why we picked Iceland.
Yeah.
So I thought that when I was researching this one, I was just kind of like, did we decide when I thought about messages? Should we change to a J country? But
no, this is still I.
Yeah.
So we haven't moved off of the letter. We haven't broken it. We've just extended I for no reason. That can just be what we do.
I mean, yeah, but there is also already a geography-based web show. They go through every single country in alphabetical order.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, we're not going for alphabetical order.
So I don't want to just like rip off that concept.
We're just forgetful.
So...
But there's only one J country we can do.
No.
Gibraltar.
Well, Gibraltar begins with a G. It's a fucking G. And there's 3 J countries.
I reckon we should do Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Yeah, Britain's never done anything wrong there.
No, never.
No. I can't think of the third one. What's the third J country? You got Japan, Jamaica, and
Jordan.
Jordan. I always forget.
No. I think we'll stray off. We'll go random.
Yeah?
We'll go random next. Not a random country, maybe a random letter.
All right. Because in that case, I know exactly what the next country we're going to do is.
All right.
The Federated States of Micronesia.
All right then. That is yeah.
Because that's why I want to stick to the alphabet game, is because then with M, we could do the Federated States of Micronesia. Do you know anything about the Federated States of Micronesia?
No, nothing at all.
Cool. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was actually quite a fun one because I know nothing about it, so it'd be interesting to learn.
There's one particular reason, but I'm going to save that for when we're doing that one.
Okay then.
Right, I think we're done talking about the troubles. Wasn't happy this happened in Iceland. This is the second time I've done this. In the last one I was like the first environmentalist of Hong Kong when I meant Iceland.
Yeah. You're always going to be doing that, isn't it? So what's going on in Ireland? I'm talking about the Federated States of Micronesia.
God damn it. No, I reckon, because I got a lot of love for the Federated States of Micronesia.
Apparently so.
So we'll see. I don't think I'll screw up that one. Yeah. Oh, we missed a trick. We should have been drinking whiskey.
Oh, fuck, innit? We should have been fucking drinking Guinness, Scott.
We should have. We definitely should have.
We should have been drinking Guinness for this episode, but instead we've got Budweiser and Amaretto.
Yeah, and...
Separately, not as a...
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Not as a mixed drink, but yeah. I mean, yeah, Ireland is the home of Guinness, isn't it? That's where it comes from. It's supposed to be better there. It's supposed to be a lot nicer.
Really?
I've always heard it. As everyone that's ever been or ever talks about Guinness always says that Irish Guinness is basically a different drink. It's like that much better.
Really? That's interesting.
And I bloody love Guinness, so
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to Ireland and try it myself. But another drink they're famous for, Scott, is whiskey, isn't it?
Yeah,
They do love their whiskey there, Scott, don't they?
they do. Has that ever led to any catastrophes?
Has
Any
there
sort of-
ever been any whiskey-based catastrophes in Ireland? Yeah, there has actually. There's a Dublin whiskey fire.
There was a fire, wasn't there? There was a... What happened with it?
Well, on the 18th of June in 1875, it's believed there was a fire that was started in the Maloney Malt House and Bonded Storehouse. So it's basically a whiskey brewery and storage place. Storehouse caught fire and superheated the whiskey barrels. There's about 5,000 barrels in there. They were superheated till they exploded, causing the fire to obviously spread and everything around it catch fire in the streets around it and that. But not only that, it caused like the whiskey to flood out of the storehouse. So the streets then became flooded with like flaming whiskey, like rivers of whiskey on fire, just going down the street. At some points up to 6 inches deep.
Jesus.
And by the time that like the fire brigade come to put it out, they didn't want to use water to put it out because obviously
That would just spread it.
that would just spread it. So they use stuff like sand and mud and try to head it off and block it from spreading more, and even use a lot of manure to try stop the fire from spreading. Well, mainly the whiskey, as it was just running down the street on fire. So a lot of the people in Dublin in the street they saw this and they thought, do you know what? It's free whiskey.
I can't tell if it's an alcoholic's nightmare or dream.
It was free whiskey, mate. So you had people using their hands to cup it up, this flaming hot whiskey, literally cupping it up and drinking it. They'd fill like their little bottles they had and that. Some people was even filling up their shoes with it and drinking. But in the end, they did stop the fire. 13 people, well, a lot of people were sent to hospital, and 13 people apparently died. The numbers are a bit iffy, so I say apparently, but supposedly 13 people died in hospital,
Okay.
not from burns or smoking inhalation or anything, but from alcohol poisoning.
Of course. This is such an Irish story. That's amazing.
So they drank so much of the runaway flaming river of whiskey that they were hospitalized and later died due to alcohol poisoning.
Jesus. Whenabouts was this?
1875.
Did anyone die in the explosion, the initial one?
No, because it was in the evening. The fire was thought to start at about like 4:45 p.m. and then it wasn't really noticed about 8 p.m. and like it was kind of only when people went to check on the storehouse, as they did like routinely, they saw, oh, grab some fire in it. But the barrels had superheated and exploded. But yeah, just a river of flaming whiskey 6 inches deep.
I thought we said we were going for a happy story.
I mean, it just kind of got off on a tangent a bit, but you know.
This actually is funny we were doing this on this day, because on this day right now, totally right now, it's Halloween.
As we record this live, yeah, on Halloween.
On Halloween.
The spooky
It's
season.
Halloween.
Yeah. And why is that important to Ireland, Scott?
Because they discovered Halloween.
They discovered it.
Apparently it was under a rock somewhere.
Someone went out on the 31st and saw someone giving away sweets and was like, yeah.
No, there's just a phantom jack-o'-lantern which just left somewhere. And
Oh, is it a jack-o'-lantern, Scott?
It is. That's totally the word for it. I feel
And
like you're about to tell me.
what are they made out of, Scott?
They're made out of beetroots.
In Ireland, it was made out of turnips.
I knew there was a catch there. That was like a QI question.
Oh, no, you're going to say pumpkins and the klaxon sounds. But no, yeah, it is thought that Halloween does have its origins from Ireland, where the festival holiday developed. It was called, now I've heard multiple pronunciations for this, it's either called Samhain or Swin. But it was basically the end of the harvest festival. They celebrated it on the 31st of October to the 1st of November, so those 2 days. And it was to celebrate the end of the harvest and the beginning of the darker period of the year, because obviously that's when we're going to the winter, really, isn't it? And it's just dark all the time. I mean, some of the earlier origins of the gatherings would have festival, feasts, and drinking, and like big gatherings.
So when did it become a whole religious thing? Because I was always taught as a child, as a good young Christian boy, that Halloween was not meant to be celebrated at all because it welcomes the devils and the evil spirits into the homes that celebrate it.
Well, this is the thing. As time goes on, these sort of ideas develop and they change with the passage of time. So we do have the more like stringent start with like the end of the harvest season, the beginning of the dark period. It's also the time of the year, this might be where you're thinking of, like where the veil between the mortal realm and the realm of spirits is at its weakest and its thinnest, allowing spirits and fairies and demons to like cross over and come into our world. And that's where you get the more like way we think of Halloween as spooky and like ghosts and stuff. And like you said, you would offer like your crops and your drinks to, or portions of it, to the gods to protect you from it.
So how does that relate to Christians and welcoming evil spirits? Because that's the... So
Not quite. It's not about welcoming evil spirits. It's about the spirits are there, and you kind of don't want to welcome them. That's where you put things like jack-o'-lanterns or now pumpkins, but then turnips with card faces and fire on to ward off evil spirits, as you do with these huge bonfires, the bonfires are a thing of like lots of Celtic sort of and Gaelic festivals, but this was definitely one that would help, like, again, with protection against them. You would also dress up children in disguises and costumes as a way to like protect them from the demons. You would also whiten your face and stuff if you was going to go out. So if the dead see you, they kind of think you're one of their own.
Like a ghost.
Yeah, like just blend in. You may have seen it in like zombie movies, how you dress up as like a zombie to like get through the zombies.
Yeah, I get it's sort of like the idea of wearing a sheet over your head to look like a ghost. You're just sort of like trying to fit in.
Yeah. So over time, then, as I said, like where the island did get influx in Christianity and Catholicism, is when like this happens a lot in Christianity. And you'll see this with a lot of, especially like Christian holidays, but a lot of famous holidays around the world and festivals. Is the idea of the Catholic Church especially, but the churches at the time altering current festivals and gods to fit in with the Christian version.
Right.
So as to not have this divide, to have this more like, oh, your guys, it's the same thing we do. It's just we just call it this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they go, oh yeah, so we on the 1st of November is All Saints Day? You must have heard of All Saints Day.
Not at all.
So it's the idea of like it's about the saints basically. So hallow meaning like saintly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then it's to do and the day before All Saints Day is like the eve of All Saints Day, so it's Hallows Eve, which then over time became Halloween. And this is how we have it today, basically. And then because when a lot of Irish people left Ireland, in fact, up to a quarter of the population actually left at one point to go to other countries during the potato famine. They a lot of them went to America, and they brought those beliefs with them, and that's how we get sort of the Halloween we know today, the more like Americanized version of it.